To my beautiful girlfriend, Clarice. My husband, Vincent, raised his glass at our 15th anniversary dinner, his hand resting possessively on her waist. 60 colleagues from Meridian Tech watched in stunned silence. Vincent's smirk faltered when Mr. Walters, our retiring CEO, stood up. Interesting timing, Vincent, considering tomorrow's announcement. I smoothly took the microphone, my diamond bracelet catching the light. The bracelet Vincent thought was an anniversary gift, but was actually from Mr. Walters to commemorate my promotion. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Thank you all for coming to what my husband thinks is our anniversary celebration. It's actually my appointment party. Effective tomorrow, I'm Meridian's new Chief Executive Officer and Vincent's boss. I smiled directly at Clarice. You might want to update your LinkedIn profile, dear. I'll be restructuring the management team first thing Monday morning. The weight of Meridian Tech's quarterly reports pressed against my ribs as I hurried through the polished hallways of our headquarters. 15 years of marriage to Vincent Harlow and 12 years at the company he helped build. Both anniversaries, approaching in the same week. I'd spent the past month coordinating with our retiring CEO, Robert Walters, to plan what Vincent believed was a surprise anniversary party, but was actually something much more significant. Louisa, just the woman I needed to see. Robert's voice echoed from his corner office as I passed. At 72, he still commanded attention. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the energy of someone 20 years younger. I slipped into his office, closing the heavy glass door behind me. The quarterly projections are ready for your review, I said, placing the folder on his desk. Excellent. He gestured to the chair across from him. But that's not why I called you in. I sat, smoothing my pencil skirt. After 12 years as Meridian's Director of Operations, I'd learned to read Robert's expressions. Today, there was mischief in his eyes. The board unanimously approved your appointment last night, he said, sliding a leather portfolio toward me. Congratulations, CEO Harlow. My breath caught. We'd been working toward this for 3 years, Robert mentoring me, preparing me to take his place when he retired. Still, hearing it confirmed made my heart race. They had concerns about the potential conflict with Vincent, Robert continued, but your track record spoke for itself. Besides, Vincent's position as marketing director doesn't intersect much with CEO responsibilities. What Robert didn't know, what no one at Meridian knew, was how dramatically my marriage had deteriorated over the past year. Vincent had grown, increasingly distant, working late, taking weekend business trips that required no reports, no follow-ups. The telltale signs were there, but I'd been too consumed with my own career advancement to confront them directly. Have you told Vincent yet? Robert asked. I shook my head. No, I was thinking of making it a surprise at the anniversary dinner. Robert's eyebrows rose. Bold move. The party's this Friday, correct? Yes, ostensibly to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. But now, I trailed off, imagining Vincent's face when he realized what was happening. He'll be proud, Robert said confidently. You two have always been Meridian's power couple. I managed a smile, not wanting to shatter Robert's illusion of my perfect marriage. If only he knew how Vincent had been undermining me at home for years, dismissing my contributions to Meridian as just following procedures anyone could manage. If only he knew about the text messages I'd seen 3 weeks ago when Vincent left his phone unlocked. Messages to someone named Clarice, filled with promises and intimacies that had never been meant for my eyes. The announcement goes public Monday morning, Robert said. But everyone attending Friday's event will get the news first. I've already arranged for the champagne. As I left Robert's office, clutching the leather portfolio containing my new contract, I felt a complex mix of emotions: triumph about my career, devastation about my marriage, and a slow-burning determination that had been building since I discovered Vincent's betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent, finalizing guest list for Friday. Any last-minute additions? How convenient that he'd taken over planning what he thought was our anniversary celebration. I'd let him believe he was surprising me, when in fact, every detail had been coordinated between me and Robert's executive assistant. Vincent had unwittingly invited exactly the right audience for the announcement of my promotion. I texted back, "Looks perfect. Can't wait." That afternoon, I found myself standing in Vincent's office doorway, watching him charm a potential client over the phone. At 45, he was still strikingly handsome. Salt and pepper hair, athletic build maintained by rigorous tennis matches, a smile that had once made my heart skip. "We'll have those projections to you by Thursday," he was saying, winking at me as he noticed my presence. "Meridian always delivers ahead of schedule." As he hung up, his demeanor shifted subtly. The warmth in his eyes cooled, his smile became perfunctory. This was the Vincent I'd come to know over the past few years. Performative, distant, going through the motions of a husband without the substance. "Need something, Louisa?" he asked, already turning back to his computer. "Just confirming we're still meeting the caterer at 6, I said. "Changed it to 7. Had to schedule drinks with Marco about the Turner account." He didn't look up as he typed. "You don't need to come. I'll handle it." This was typical lately. Vincent rescheduling, making decisions unilaterally, gradually excluding me from what should have been shared experiences. Once we'd been true partners. Now I was an afterthought. "Fine," I replied. "I'll use the time to finish my presentation for Robert." Vincent snorted softly. "Another operations review? Doesn't the man have enough binders of procedures from you?" I bit back a retort. Let him think my meetings with Robert were routine operations discussions. Let him believe I was just the diligent, procedural counterpart to his creative, charismatic leadership. Friday would reveal the truth soon enough. On my way back to my office, I passed Amelia from HR, who gave me a knowing smile. As one of the few who knew about my upcoming promotion, she'd become a confidant of sorts. "Everything on track for Friday?" she asked quietly as we stepped into the elevator together. "Perfectly," I replied. "Vincent has no idea what's coming." "And you're sure about making the announcement at what he thinks is your anniversary party?" Concern flickered across her face. "It might create quite a scene." I thought about the texts. To Clarice, about years of subtle dismissals, about the way Vincent had gradually relegated me to the role of supportive wife, rather than equal partner. "I'm counting on it," I said as the elevator doors closed. The first indication that something was truly wrong came 3 months earlier at the Morrison account celebration. Meridian had secured a $12 million contract with Morrison Healthcare, a deal I'd structured meticulously, spending weekends fine-tuning the proposal while Vincent worked on the presentation aesthetics. To Morrison and Meridian, Vincent had toasted, standing at the head of the conference room table. The beginning of a beautiful partnership. Our team raised their glasses, the afternoon sunlight catching the amber liquid of expensive scotch. Marco Delgado, Vincent's right-hand man, leaned in. Vincent really knocked it out of the park with that final presentation. Morrison's CFO told me they were on the fence until Vincent showed them the 5-year projection models. I nearly choked on my drink. Those projections were entirely my work, complex financial models that had taken weeks to perfect. Vincent had merely presented them. "Actually, I began, but Vincent's hand landed on my shoulder, squeezing slightly too hard. "My wife is too modest to say it, but she helped format some of those slides," Vincent interjected smoothly. "Always my detail person. While you're all here, I should mention we've been invited to the Mayor's Technology Innovation Dinner next month. Marco and I will represent Meridian." My smile remained fixed, but something cold settled in my stomach. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The mayor's dinner was a major networking opportunity, one I'd specifically mentioned wanting to attend. And the dismissal of my work as formatting slides burned like acid. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, I finally spoke. Those were my financial projections, Vincent, my strategy, my months of work. Vincent kept his eyes on the road, his profile sharp in the dashboard light. Don't be petty, Louisa. Everyone at Meridian knows you're valuable. But client-facing events need a certain approach. You get caught up in the minutiae. Clients respond better to the big picture. The minutiae secured that account, I said quietly. And my presentation closed it, he replied with finality, turning up the radio to signal the end of the conversation. That night marked a shift in my perspective. I began noticing patterns I'd previously rationalized away, how Vincent scheduled important meetings during my departmental reviews, how he referred to my operations team as support staff rather than strategic partners, how he'd begun excluding me from social events with clients, claiming they were just drinks or informal chats. 2 weeks after the Morrison celebration, Robert called me into his office unexpectedly. Louisa, close the door, he said, his expression serious. I want to discuss something with you. I settled into the chair across from his desk, tension coiling in my shoulders. Had I made some mistake? Was there an issue with one of my reports? Instead, Robert slid a folder across his desk. I'm retiring at the end of the year. The news wasn't entirely surprising. Robert was past standard retirement. But the timing was unexpected. The company will miss your leadership, I said carefully. The question is who will provide that leadership going forward. He tapped the folder. The board has asked me to groom my replacement. I've been watching you for years, Louisa. Your operational expertise, your strategic thinking, your ability to build consensus across departments. These are CEO qualities. My pulse quickened. Are you saying? I'm saying I want to mentor you for the position. Intensively, starting now. If you're interested. I'm definitely interested, I replied immediately, my mind already racing through implications. Robert nodded approvingly. I thought so. But I should point out the obvious. This creates an unusual dynamic with Vincent. Have you two discussed the possibility of either of you moving into executive leadership? The question caught me off guard. The truth was, Vincent had occasionally mentioned his ambitions for a C-suite position, always framing it as an eventuality. He assumed his charisma and client relationships would propel him upward, while my role was to maintain operations, important, but not visionary, in his estimation. We haven't discussed it recently, I said diplomatically. Robert studied me, his eyes shrewd. This will need to remain confidential until the board makes its final decision. I suggest not discussing it with anyone, including Vincent, until we're further along in the process. Under normal circumstances, I would have shared everything with my husband. But Vincent's recent behavior, combined with my growing suspicions about his fidelity, made Robert's suggestion of confidentiality seem reasonable, even necessary. I understand, I said. When do we start? We already have, Robert replied with a small smile. That Morrison strategy? Pure CEO thinking. I've been testing you for months. As spring turned to summer, I began living a double life. By day, I continued my role as operations director while secretly meeting with Robert for intensive mentoring sessions. By night, I maintained the facade of a contented wife while gathering evidence of Vincent's infidelity. The text messages had been just the beginning. There were unexplained charges on our credit card, dinners at restaurants we'd never visited together, a weekend charge at a hotel in the wine country, a jewelry purchase from a boutique downtown. When questioned, Vincent had ready explanations. Business dinners, a conference, a gift for his mother's birthday. I might have believed him if I hadn't seen him leaving that same boutique with a tall blonde woman one Tuesday afternoon when he'd claimed to be meeting with suppliers. They hadn't seen me. I'd been across the street, returning from a lunch meeting with Robert. The casual intimacy of Vincent's hand on the small of her back told me everything I needed to know. That evening, Vincent announced he was planning a 15th anniversary celebration, a surprise party he'd organize himself. "You've been so busy lately," he said, pouring himself a generous whiskey. "Let me handle this. You deserve to be celebrated." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was my unfaithful husband, planning an anniversary celebration while presumably carrying on an affair. Yet his suggestion aligned perfectly with my needs. A gathering of Meridian's key personnel would be the ideal setting for Robert's announcement of my promotion. "That sounds wonderful," I said, kissing his cheek with practiced affection. "How thoughtful of you." Vincent seemed momentarily taken aback by my easy agreement, perhaps expecting me to insist on involvement. He recovered quickly, outlining plans for a Friday evening event at Meridian's renovated rooftop space. "I'll handle everything," he assured me. "Just show up looking beautiful." "Who's on the guest list?" I asked casually. "The usual suspects. Department heads, key clients, the board members who aren't traveling." He sipped his whiskey. "Anyone specific you want to include?" "Make sure Robert's there," I said. "He's been so supportive lately." Vincent's eyebrow arched slightly. "Old man Walters? Didn't realize you two were close." "He values the work my team has been doing," I replied, looking down at my tablet to hide the satisfaction in my eyes. It would mean a lot to have him there. Later, I texted Robert. "Vincent is planning our anniversary party at Meridian on Friday, June 18th. All key personnel will be present." Robert's response came quickly. "Perfect timing. The board meets the night before for the final vote on your appointment. We'll make the announcement at your party." The pieces were falling into place. All I needed now was confirmation of what I already knew, the identity of the woman Vincent was seeing. If I was going to upend both my marriage and the company's structure in one night, I wanted all the facts at my disposal. I always prided myself on my professionalism. Even as my suspicions about Vincent's infidelity grew, I maintained our household with the same efficiency I brought to Meridian's operations. Perhaps that's why the discovery hit so hard, because it happened in our home, the one space I still considered sacred despite our fraying marriage. It was a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks before the anniversary party. Vincent was supposedly at a client dinner, one I'd strategically not questioned despite the late hour. I was using the quiet house to review the CEO transition documents Robert had prepared, spreading confidential papers across our dining room table. The doorbell rang at 10:37 p.m. Assuming it was a package delivery notification, I was shocked to find Marco on our doorstep, clearly intoxicated and unsteady. "Louisa!" he exclaimed too loudly. "Is Vincent home? We were supposed to meet at Halloran's after his dinner." "He's still at his client dinner," I said, blocking the entrance, aware of the sensitive documents visible on the table behind me. Marco's expression shifted to confusion. "Client dinner? We didn't have any client dinners scheduled tonight." He leaned against the doorframe, his words slurring slightly. "He said he was working late with you on the anniversary party details." The lie hung in the air between us. I maintained my composure with effort. "Perhaps I misunderstood. He's not here in any case." Marco nodded too emphatically. "No problem. Tell him I stopped by." He turned to leave, then swiveled back. "The anniversary party's going to be amazing. Vincent's been working on it for weeks. Clarice has such great taste. The decorations are perfect." My heart stuttered. "Clarice?" "His new assistant. You. Haven't met her. Smart girl. Former event planner. Vincent brought her in to help with the party." Marco's inebriated state had loosened his tongue. "She's been all over the details. Between us, I think Vincent is grooming her for more than just event planning. She's been sitting in on strategy meetings, client calls, way beyond an assistant's usual role. I thanked Marco, closed the door, and stood motionless in our entryway. Clarice, the woman from the text messages, the blonde from the jewelry store. And apparently, Vincent's assistant, a position I hadn't known was filled, despite my role overseeing company operations including staffing. Vincent had hired his mistress and kept it from me. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. Running. Late. Don't wait up. Early meeting tomorrow. I stared at the screen, a cold clarity washing over me. In that moment, something fundamental shifted. The hurt transformed into something harder, more focused. I returned to the dining room, no longer seeing the CEO transition documents as part of some abstract future, but as the blueprint for justice. I called Robert despite the late hour. I need to accelerate our timeline, I said when he answered, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. And I need a favor regarding staffing approvals. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian before anyone else, using my operations access to examine Vincent's departmental personnel records. As I suspected, Clarice Thompson had been hired 3 months ago as a special projects coordinator, reporting directly to Vincent. A position created without proper HR protocols, and with a salary well above standard for an entry-level role. The approval had bypassed my department through a loophole in our system that Vincent had exploited. I was composing an email to HR about unauthorized position creations when Vincent appeared in my doorway, looking freshly showered and unreasonably cheerful. "Morning," he said, sipping from his travel mug. "Sleep well?" "Well enough," I replied neutrally. "How was your client dinner?" "Productive. Morrison is considering expanding their contract." A smooth lie delivered without hesitation. "Listen, I need your signature on this." He placed a document on my desk, a requisition for additional marketing department funds, ostensibly for the Turner account. I scanned the form, noting the vague description and inflated amount. "What specifically is this for?" Vincent's smile tightened imperceptibly. "Just some additional resources we need for Turner. Standard stuff." I examined the form more carefully. The cost center routing would allocate the funds to the new discretionary account Vincent had created, the same one likely funding Clarice's inflated salary. "I'll need more details before I can approve this," I said, setting the form aside. "Complete projections, specific allocations." A flash of annoyance crossed Vincent's face. "Since when do you need line item breakdowns for departmental transfers?" "This isn't that complicated, Louisa." "Since anomalies appeared in the last quarterly review," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Robert asked me to tighten our approval processes." Vincent's expression darkened at the mention of Robert. "Robert. Always Robert lately. I'm beginning to think he values your opinion more than mine." There was a strange note in his voice. Jealousy, but not the romantic kind. Professional jealousy. Vincent had noticed my closer relationship with the CEO but had misinterpreted it, assuming it was merely Robert valuing my input rather than grooming me as his replacement. "Robert values thoroughness," I said. "Complete this properly and I'll sign it this afternoon." Vincent left without another word, his back stiff with irritation. The moment he was gone, I sent the requisition to Amelia in HR with a note requesting verification of all recent marketing department expenses. Then I opened my secure email and sent Robert a message. "Need to discuss Clarice Thompson hire. Unauthorized position, Vincent circumvented protocols." Robert's response was immediate. "My office, 11 a.m. At 10:45, I gathered my documentation and headed toward Robert's office, taking the long route through the marketing department. I needed to see her, this woman who had become central to my husband's deceptions. I spotted her immediately. Seated at a desk outside Vincent's office was a striking blonde woman in her early 30s, leaning over Vincent's shoulder as they reviewed something on his computer. The familiarity in their posture, the way she laughed at something he said, it confirmed everything. As I passed, Vincent glanced up, surprise registering on his face. "Louisa, need something?" "Just heading to Robert's office," I said pleasantly, extending my hand to the blonde. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Louisa Harlow, Operations Director." She took my hand, her grip firm. "Clarice Thompson, Special Projects Coordinator." Her smile was confident, untroubled. Clearly, Vincent hadn't mentioned I was his wife. "I've heard great things about your department." "How interesting," I replied, maintaining my professional smile. "I wasn't aware we had a Special Projects Coordinator position. I handle all operations staffing approvals." Vincent interjected quickly. "It's a new role. Marketing specific. I mentioned it at the last department head meeting." Must have slipped. "My mind," I said, knowing full well he had done no such thing. "We should catch up on the details, Clarice. Perhaps after the anniversary party Friday? I'd love to hear more about your special projects." The slight widening of Vincent's eyes was my only indication that he understood the implied threat in my words. Clarice, oblivious to the undercurrents, nodded enthusiastically. "I'd love that. Actually, I've been helping Vincent plan the anniversary party. It's going to be wonderful." "I'm sure it will be," I said, locking eyes with Vincent. "Full of surprises." That evening, I decided to confront Vincent directly. 15 years of marriage deserved at least the dignity of honesty before whatever came next. I prepared carefully, cooking his favorite meal, opening a bottle of the Barolo we'd brought back from our 10th anniversary trip to Italy, setting the dining room table with our wedding china. When Vincent arrived home, his expression registered, surprise at the elaborate dinner setup. "Special occasion?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Just thought we should talk," I replied, pouring him a glass of wine. "It's been a while since we've had a real conversation." Vincent's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, typed a quick response, then placed it face down on the table. "Work never stops," he said with a practiced smile. We made it through the appetizer with meaningless small talk about Meridian's stock price and an upcoming industry conference. As I served the main course, I finally broached the subject. "I met Clarice today," I said casually. "She seems very involved in your department." Vincent's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "She's efficient. A good find." "Where did you find her, exactly?" "Her hiring paperwork seems to have bypassed standard protocols." Vincent took a deliberate sip of wine. "Marco recommended her. She worked for one of our clients previously. When we needed additional support, I brought her on quickly. Sometimes, the bureaucracy at Meridian slows things down unnecessarily." "The bureaucracy exists for a reason," I countered. "Proper vetting, appropriate salary bands, conflict of interest checks. Are you questioning my judgment?" His voice took on an edge. "I'm questioning why you hired someone without proper authorization, created a position that doesn't exist in our organizational structure, and have been routing funds through a discretionary account to pay for it." I kept my tone even, factual. "And I'm questioning why you told Clarice to help plan our anniversary party but never mentioned it to me." Vincent set down his fork, his pretense of normalcy evaporating. "You're spying on my department's finances now?" "I'm doing my job. Operations includes financial oversight, as you well know." Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying me. "What is this really about, Louisa? If you have something to say, just say it." I met his gaze steadily. "Are you having an affair with Clarice?" The question hung in the air between us. Vincent's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on indignation. "That's what this is about? You're jealous of a talented employee, so you're inventing financial improprieties?" He shook his head in exaggerated disappointment. "I expected better from you professionally." "Answer the question, Vincent." "I don't answer to you," he snapped. Then, moderating his tone, "My relationship with Clarice is strictly professional. She's ambitious, creative, and brings fresh perspectives that Meridian desperately needs. If you spent more time focusing on innovation instead of procedures, maybe you'd recognize that. It was the non-denial denial of a skilled manipulator. I'd seen Vincent use the same technique in negotiations: redirect, attack, make the other party defensive. I refused to play along. Financial records don't lie, I said quietly. Hotel charges, jewelry purchases, dinners I never attended, and strange coincidences, like you being with Clarice when you were supposedly at client meetings. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're tracking my credit card statements now? Checking up on my whereabouts? Do you hear yourself, Louisa? This paranoia isn't healthy. Then explain it, I challenged. Explain the text messages I saw 3 weeks ago. Explain why Marco thought you were working late with me when you told me you had a client dinner. Explain why you created a position without proper authorization and are paying Clarice significantly above market rate. Vincent pushed his plate away, his meal untouched. I don't have to explain myself to you. Not at home, and certainly not about business decisions at Meridian. I've built that marketing department into the company's driving force. Without my client relationships, we'd still be a regional player instead of expanding nationally. We built Meridian together, I reminded him. Vincent laughed, the sound harsh and dismissive. You maintained it. I built it. There's a difference. He stood, tossing his napkin onto the table. I'm not having this conversation. You've clearly made up your mind to see problems where none exist. Where are you going? I asked as he grabbed his keys. Out. I need some air. Don't wait up. As the front door slammed behind him, I sat alone at our beautifully set table, the food growing cold. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd expected. Denials, deflection, gaslighting. Vincent had revealed more in what he hadn't said than in what he had. I began clearing the dishes, my movements mechanical as my mind processed the exchange. I had given him the opportunity to be honest, to acknowledge his betrayal, perhaps even to apologize. Instead, he doubled down on his deceptions, attacking me for discovering them. My phone rang, Robert calling. I answered, my voice steadier. Then I felt. How did the conversation with HR go regarding Clarice? He asked without preamble. Illuminating, I replied. Vincent circumvented all protocols, created the position without approval, set the salary himself, and bypassed the normal interview process. Amelia is concerned about potential liability. Robert was silent for a moment. And what did you discover on a personal level? The question surprised me. Robert had never asked about my marriage before. What makes you think there's a personal component? I asked carefully. Louisa, Robert's voice softened. I've been in business for nearly 50 years. I recognize patterns. Vincent's behavior recently, the secretive meetings, the unnecessary spending, the new hire with the ambiguous role, it's unfortunately familiar. I sank into a chair, suddenly drained. He's having an affair with her. He denies it, but all the evidence points to it. I'm sorry, Robert said simply. Both for the personal betrayal and for the professional one. Vincent's actions have created liability for Meridian. The unauthorized position, the misallocated funds, these are serious issues. I confronted him tonight, I admitted. He denied everything and walked out. What do you need from me? Robert asked, his tone shifting to the practical mentor I'd come to rely on. The question clarified something within me. What did I need? Not sympathy, not revenge. I needed to reclaim my power, both personally and professionally. I need to accelerate the transition, I said. If the board has approved my appointment, I want to announce it at Friday's party as planned, and I need your support for what comes after. The board's vote was unanimous, Robert confirmed. You have my complete support. What specifically do you anticipate needing? I'll be restructuring the marketing department immediately. and I'll need to address the Clarice situation properly through HR. There will be resistance. From Vincent, Robert acknowledged. Yes, I expect there will be, but as CEO, you'll have full authority to make necessary changes. Do you want me to delay my retirement? Stay on as a consultant during the transition? The offer was tempting but unnecessary. No, I can handle Vincent. After ending the call, I walked through our house, seeing it with new eyes. Photos of Vincent and me on vacation, at company events, at our wedding, artifacts of a relationship that had been corroding from within for longer than I'd admitted to myself. I entered Vincent's home office, a space I rarely visited out of respect for his privacy. That respect had been misplaced. I opened his desk drawer, finding what I expected, receipts carelessly tossed inside, including one from the jewelry store for a diamond bracelet I'd never received. The date coincided with our upcoming anniversary, a gift for Clarice, purchased with our joint account. The final confirmation I needed. I closed the drawer and opened my laptop, drafting 2 emails. The first to Amelia in HR, requesting a complete audit of Vincent's departmental hiring and finances, effective immediately. The second to our family lawyer, outlining what I needed prepared before Friday. Vincent returned home after midnight, slipping quietly into the guest bedroom without a word. I lay awake in our bed, strangely calm as I contemplated the end of my marriage coinciding with the beginning of my leadership. By morning, I knew exactly what needed to be done. Thursday morning arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my mood. Dark, electric, and charged with potential energy. Vincent had left before dawn, his side of the guest bed already cold when I checked. No note, no text, just absence. It spoke volumes. I dressed with particular care, a charcoal gray suit I'd purchased. In Milan, a subtle power color that conveyed authority without flashiness. In my jewelry box, I found the sapphire earrings my grandmother had given me when I graduated business school. For when you need to remember your own strength, she'd said. Today was certainly such a day. When I arrived at Meridian, Amelia was waiting in my office, a thick folder in her hands. Her expression told me everything before she spoke a word. The audit results, she said, closing the door behind her. It's worse than we thought. I gestured for her to sit. Give me the highlights. Vincent has created 3 unauthorized positions. In the past 8 months, all reporting directly to him, all with salaries well above standard bands. She opened the folder, pointing to a spreadsheet. Clarice Thompson is the most recent, but there's also Marco's promotion to Strategic Initiatives Director with a 40% salary increase, and a consultant named Crystal Nevins who's being paid as an independent contractor while functioning as a regular employee. Tax implications? I asked, immediately seeing the liability. Significant. Our legal team is concerned. Amelia flipped to another page. There's more. Vincent has been routing client entertainment expenses through multiple cost centers to disguise the total amounts. When consolidated, he's exceeded authorized limits by approximately $42,000 over the past quarter alone. I absorbed this information, feeling a strange detachment. The professional betrayal somehow hurt more than the personal one, perhaps because I'd already accepted the death of my marriage, but the corruption of Meridian's values still had the power to wound me. Has Robert seen this? I asked. Yes. He's requested a meeting with both of you at 11. I nodded. Thank you, Amelia. Please continue the audit. I want to know everything before tomorrow's announcement. When she left, I opened my secure email to find a message from Robert. Legal has reviewed the audit findings. Clear violations of company policy and potentially of financial regulations. Board is concerned. Need to discuss immediate action. At precisely 11, I entered Robert's office, to find him standing at the window, watching the rain lash against the glass. Vincent sat in one of the chairs facing Robert's desk, his posture deliberately relaxed, though his white-knuckled grip on the armrest betrayed his tension. Louisa. Robert acknowledged me without turning. Please sit. I took the chair beside Vincent, not looking at him. Would someone like to explain why I'm here? Vincent asked, his tone carefully modulated to convey inconvenience rather than concern. Robert turned from the window, his expression grave. Financial irregularities have been identified in the marketing department. Serious ones. Vincent's laugh sounded forced. If this is about the discretionary account allocations, that's standard procedure for client development. Every marketing department maintains flexibility for relationship building. This goes far beyond relationship building, Robert replied, sitting behind his desk. Unauthorized hiring, salary misrepresentations, expense misallocations. The audit findings are concerning. Vincent straightened, his casual demeanor evaporating. Audit? Who authorized an audit of my department? I did, I said, speaking for the first time. As operations director, it's my responsibility to ensure financial compliance across all departments. Vincent turned to me, eyes narrowing. Without discussing it with me first? This is about Clarice, isn't it? You're using company resources to pursue a personal vendetta. This has nothing to do with your relationship with Clarice, I replied evenly. This is about financial impropriety. The audit was conducted according to established protocols. My relationship, Vincent started, then caught himself. There is no relationship beyond a professional one. Robert cleared his throat. The nature of your personal involvement with Ms. Thompson is not my primary concern, though it does raise questions about conflicts of interest in her hiring. What concerns me are the financial violations. Vincent turned to Robert, his expression hardening. With all due respect, Robert, you've never understood modern marketing. Relationship building requires flexibility. The bureaucracy at Meridian is stifling innovation. If I had waited for proper authorization for every decision, we'd have lost half our major clients to more agile competitors. Procedures exist to prevent exactly these types of problems, Robert countered. Innovation doesn't require deception, Vincent. I've done nothing wrong, Vincent insisted. I've grown this company's revenue by 38% in 3 years. If I've occasionally expedited processes to achieve results, that's called leadership. It's called fraud, I said quietly. Vincent's head snapped toward me, shock and fury flashing across his face. What did you say? Misappropriation of company funds, false documentation, bypassing established controls. These aren't process expeditions, Vincent. They're potentially criminal violations. The color drained from Vincent's face. For the first time, he seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. That's absurd. Everything I've done has been for Meridian's benefit, including hiring your girlfriend at an inflated salary without proper authorization? I asked. Vincent slammed his hand on the armrest. Enough with this jealousy. Clarice is qualified for her position. Her previous event planning experience is why I asked her to help with our anniversary party. That's all. The anniversary party, I repeated softly. Yes, let's discuss that. You've invited the board, the executive team, all department heads. Quite a guest list for what's supposedly a personal celebration. Vincent shrugged, some of his confidence returning. I wanted to celebrate properly. 15 years is significant. Indeed it is, Robert interjected, which makes tomorrow evening the perfect opportunity to make our announcement. Vincent looked between us, confusion evident. What announcement? Robert met my eyes, silently asking if I wanted to tell him. I gave a small nod. As you know, I'm retiring at the end of the year, Robert began. The board has been evaluating potential successors for the past 6 months. After thorough consideration, they've made their selection. He paused. Louisa will be Meridian's next CEO, effective Monday morning. The silence that followed was absolute. Vincent stared at Robert, then at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, shock, and finally, a terrible understanding. This is a joke, he finally managed. It's not, Robert replied. The decision was unanimous. Louisa has demonstrated exceptional leadership, strategic vision, and financial acumen, exactly what Meridian needs for its next phase of growth. Vincent turned to me, his voice low. You knew about this. For how long? Robert approached me 3 months ago, I admitted. The board has been evaluating my performance since then. 3 months, Vincent repeated. While I've been planning our anniversary celebration, you've been plotting to become my boss? While you've been carrying on an affair and misappropriating company funds, I corrected. I've been focusing on my career advancement. Yes. Vincent stood abruptly. This is a mistake. The marketing department drives this company's growth. Without client relationships, without fiscal responsibility, there is no company, Robert interrupted. The board values your client work, Vincent. But leadership requires integrity. The audit findings raise serious concerns about your judgment. So that's it? Louisa becomes CEO and I continue running marketing like nothing happened? After this ambush? Robert and I exchanged glances. I spoke carefully. Your role at Meridian will depend on several factors, including your cooperation with the ongoing audit and your acceptance of proper oversight going forward. Vincent looked at me with something approaching hatred. You won't fire me. You can't. The clients are loyal to me, not Meridian. That remains to be seen, I said, rising to my feet. In the meantime, perhaps you should focus on making tomorrow's anniversary party a success. After all, you've put so much effort into planning it with Clarice. As I walked out of Robert's office, leaving Vincent stunned behind me, I felt the weight of 15 years lifting from my shoulders. The point of no return had been crossed. Whatever happened next, professionally or personally, there would be no going back. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. We need to talk. Tonight. I replied simply, yes, we do. I'll be home at 7. By the time I left Meridian that evening, rain still falling steadily outside, I knew with absolute certainty that the conversation awaiting me at home would be the last meaningful exchange between Vincent and me as husband and wife. Tomorrow I would become his boss. By next week I would likely be his ex-wife. The thought should have devastated me. Instead, I felt only a curious lightness, as if I'd set down a burden I'd carried for far too long. Vincent was waiting when I arrived home, sitting in our darkened living room with only a single lamp illuminating his face. 2 glasses and an open bottle of scotch sat on the coffee table. He'd changed from his business attire into jeans and a casual shirt, the outfit he wore when he wanted to appear relaxed, despite being anything but. Drink? He offered as I set down my briefcase. I declined with a small shake of my head, remaining standing. The physical advantage of height seemed important somehow. How long have you been planning this? Vincent asked, his voice unnervingly calm. Planning what exactly? My career advancement? The audit? Confronting you about Clarice? I crossed my arms. You'll need to be more specific. Vincent swirled the amber liquid in his glass. All of it. This entire coup. Interesting choice of words, I noted. A coup implies overthrowing legitimate authority. You have no authority over me, Vincent. Personally or professionally. We're married, he said, as if that explained everything. A partnership that you've been violating in every possible way. I moved to the window, watching raindrops trace paths down the glass. To answer your question, I didn't plan any of this. Robert approached me about the CEO position after I'd already noticed your behavior changing. The audit was standard procedure, once financial irregularities were flagged. And Clarice, I turned to face him, that revelation was courtesy of your own carelessness. Vincent set down his glass with deliberate control. Let me explain about Clarice. There's nothing to explain. I've seen the text messages, the credit card charges, the hotel receipts. I watched you with her at the jewelry store when you were supposedly meeting suppliers. I heard Marco's drunken revelations about how involved she is in our anniversary. Party planning. I kept my voice level, factual. The diamond bracelet in your desk drawer removes any lingering doubt. Vincent's expression flickered with surprise. He hadn't realized I'd found the bracelet. It's not what you think, he attempted. Then enlighten me. I leaned against the window frame, genuinely curious what explanation he might fabricate. Vincent stood, pacing the room like a courtroom lawyer preparing to deliver a closing argument. Clarice and I have been working on a major new business pitch. Confidential, potentially worth millions to Meridian. The texts, the meetings, they were about this project. At hotels, jewelry stores, he waved dismissively. Some meetings required discretion. The client is particularly security conscious. As for the bracelet, he hesitated. It was meant to be a surprise. For you. For our anniversary. The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. A bracelet identical to one Clarice wore to the office today? What a coincidence. Vincent froze. You're monitoring what she wears now? I noticed details. It's why I'm good at my job. I straightened from the window. The truth, Vincent. For once. You owe me that much after 15 years. He stared at me for a long moment before his shoulders sagged. Fine. Yes. Clarice and I have been seeing each other. It started 3 months ago. It wasn't planned. Nothing ever is with you, I observed. Yet somehow she ended up on Meridian's payroll in a fabricated position with an inflated salary. She's qualified, Vincent insisted. Her previous experience. Save it for the HR investigation, I cut him off. I'm not interested in her resume. I want to know why you maintained this charade. Why plan an anniversary party? Why not simply ask for a divorce? Vincent sank back onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. It's complicated. Simplify it for me. He took a deep breath. The Turner account. It's faltering. Their CMO is considering moving their business to Davidson and Reed. I needed to project stability, both personally and professionally. A public separation right now would raise questions, create distractions. The truth, when it finally came, was more callous than I'd imagined. Not a crime of passion, but one of calculation. Vincent had maintained our marriage as a business strategy, a facade to present to clients. So our marriage became a marketing tool, I said softly. And when were you planning to end it? After securing Turner? Next quarter? Next year? Vincent had the decency to look ashamed. I hadn't decided. Things with Clarice progressed faster than anticipated. She's become important to me. Important enough to risk your career over? Because that's what's happening, Vincent. The financial improprieties aren't going away. I can explain the accounting issues, he said quickly. Creative budget management isn't unusual in client-facing departments. It goes beyond creative. It's fraud. Vincent's expression hardened. You won't pursue that. Think of the damage to Meridian if this becomes public. Your first act as CEO would be explaining to shareholders why the company's marketing director is under investigation. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. Vincent was suggesting that his misconduct could damage my leadership before it began. Let me be clear, I said, my voice calm but firm. I will do whatever is necessary to protect Meridian's integrity. If that means a full investigation into your department's finances, so be it. You'd sacrifice me? Your husband? You sacrificed our marriage the moment you began your affair. You sacrificed your professional integrity when you hired your mistress and misallocated company funds. Those were your choices, Vincent, not mine. He stood again, moving closer. What do you want, Louisa? To humiliate me? Fire me? What's your end game here? I met his gaze steadily. Transparency, accountability, the same standards I apply to every aspect of Meridian's operations. And personally, he pressed, what do You want from our marriage? Nothing, I replied simply. It's over. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll receive the divorce papers next week. Vincent's facade finally cracked. Just like that? 15 years ended with a business decision? No, Vincent. You ended our 15 years with your decisions. I'm simply acknowledging reality. I moved toward the stairs. I'll be staying at the Archer Hotel until this is resolved. You can remain here through the weekend? And tomorrow, the anniversary party? I paused on the first step. The show goes on. You planned it after all. I wouldn't want to waste your and Clarice's efforts. This is insane, Vincent muttered. You can't seriously expect me to stand beside you while Robert announces you as my new boss, knowing you're investigating me for fraud and filing for divorce. I expect you to maintain the appearance of stability you've been so concerned about, I replied. One last performance for the Turner account. Consider it your parting contribution to Meridian. As I climbed the stairs to pack an overnight bag, Vincent called after me. This won't end well, Louisa. Not for either of us. I stopped, turning to look down at him, the man I'd once loved, now a stranger wearing my husband's face. It already hasn't ended well, Vincent. But what comes next? Will be different, at least. What comes next is you trying to run a marketing-driven company without its key marketing asset, he said, desperation edging into his voice. The clients are loyal to me. You know that. We'll see. I continued up the stairs. In our bedroom, I efficiently packed essentials while Vincent remained downstairs, the sound of ice clinking in his glass carrying through the quiet house. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Everything in place for tomorrow. Are you certain you want to proceed as planned? I replied. Absolutely. No changes. As I zipped my suitcase, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the dresser. 15 years. Ago, we'd stood together on a beach in Maui, young and in love, believing we were building something lasting together. In a way, we had, just not what either of us had imagined. I placed the photo face down as I left the room. Vincent was waiting by the front door as I descended with my suitcase. This isn't necessary, he said. I can stay elsewhere tonight. No, I replied. I need the space to prepare for tomorrow. My first public appearance as Meridian's incoming CEO should be made from neutral territory, not from a house in the middle of marital dissolution. His expression darkened. You've thought of everything. Not everything, I admitted. Just what matters. As I stepped past him onto the porch, Vincent grabbed my arm. Louisa, wait. We should talk about how to handle this. Come up with a united strategy. I gently but firmly removed his hand. There is no we anymore, Vincent. Not at home. And after. Tomorrow, not at Meridian either. What does that mean? His voice sharpened with alarm. It means you should bring your best self to the anniversary party tomorrow, I said. Consider it your final performance review. I walked to my car through the rain, leaving Vincent standing in the doorway of what had once been our home. As I drove away, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Just the quiet certainty that comes with finally seeing the truth after years of willful blindness. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning for both of us. Vincent would face the consequences of his deceptions, and I would step into a role that would forever alter how the world perceived me, not as Vincent Harlow's supportive wife, but as Louisa Harlow, CEO of Meridian Tech. The diamond bracelet Vincent had bought for Clarice glinted in my purse. I'd taken it from his desk drawer before leaving. Not to wear, not to keep, but as evidence of the final truth that had been hidden from me for too long. The Archer Hotel provided exactly what I needed that night: anonymity, quiet, and distance from the life that was unraveling around me. After a long shower that failed to wash away the tension in my shoulders, I ordered room service and spread my materials across the king-sized bed. Robert had sent a detailed email with tomorrow's announcement protocol. He would make opening remarks. At 7:30 p.m., introduce me as Meridian's new CEO and present me with a symbolic gift, a custom fountain pen that had been passed to each new chief executive since the company's founding. I would then give a brief acceptance speech, outlining my vision for Meridian's future. The timing coincided perfectly with Vincent's planned anniversary toast. I rehearsed my speech until the words flowed naturally, then turned my attention to a folder I'd been avoiding, the complete financial audit of Vincent's department. As operations director, I'd reviewed countless financial reports over the years, but never one that felt so personal. The details were damning. Beyond the unauthorized hiring and salary irregularities, Vincent had been systematically diverting resources to projects that showed no clear benefit to Meridian. One particular line item caught my attention: a $78,000 payment to a company called Horizon Initiatives, dated 3 weeks earlier. I'd never heard of Horizon Initiatives. A quick search revealed it had been incorporated just 2 months ago, with a business address matching a virtual office provider. Further digging showed the company's registration documents listed only one officer, Crystal Nevins. Crystal, the consultant Amelia had mentioned in her initial findings. The third unauthorized hire. I texted Amelia despite the late hour. Need everything on Crystal Nevins and Horizon Initiatives first thing tomorrow. Her response came quickly. Already on it. Initial research shows Crystal previously worked at Davidson. And Reed. We'll have full report by 7 a.m. Davidson and Reed, the agency competing for the Turner account. A suspicion began forming at the edges of my consciousness, but I needed more evidence before acting on it. I turned to my laptop, accessing Meridian's client management system through my secure login. Vincent's department maintained detailed records of all client interactions, carefully guarded from other departments under the guise of maintaining relationship confidentiality. As operations director, I had theoretical access, but had always respected the boundaries Vincent established. Another example of how I'd enabled his compartmentalization. No more. I systematically reviewed every entry related to the Turner account over the past 6 months. Most were standard meeting notes and campaign updates, but several entries stood out, all made by Vincent, all marked strategic planning, all without specific details. The dates aligned perfectly with the Horizon Initiatives payments. On an impulse, I checked Vincent's calendar entries for those same dates. Each showed meetings with Turner executives, but when I cross-referenced with the company's visitor logs, no Turner representatives had been on Meridian's premises those days. I sat back against the headboard, the pieces clicking into place. Vincent wasn't just having an affair and misallocating funds, he was setting up a competing business. Horizon Initiatives wasn't a vendor, it was his exit strategy. Crystal, the former Davidson and Reed employee, was his connection to Meridian's competitor. The Turner account wasn't faltering. Vincent was deliberately undermining it to take it with him when he left. My phone rang. Robert again. Have you seen the Horizon Initiatives data? He asked without preamble. Just connecting the dots now, I replied. Vincent's planning to leave Meridian and take Turner with him. Not just Turner, Robert said grimly. I've been making calls. 3 of our major clients have had unusual meetings with Vincent in the past month, off-site, unrecorded in our system. I suspect he's been laying groundwork for a mass exodus. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair. Vincent wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to gut the company we'd built together. How long have you suspected? I asked. Only recently, Robert admitted. When I first approached you about the CEO position, it was purely based on your merits. But as I began transition planning, certain inconsistencies in the marketing department's client reporting raised concerns. That's part of why I accelerated your timeline. We need more than suspicions, I said, executive instincts taking over. We need concrete evidence before tomorrow's announcement. That's why I'm calling, Robert replied. I've authorized emergency access to Vincent's company email archive and cloud storage. The security team is extracting everything now. As operations director, you need to sign off on it. Normally, Accessing an employee's private communications required multiple approvals and strict protocols. These weren't normal circumstances. Send the authorization form. I'll sign it immediately. I paused. What if we find nothing conclusive by tomorrow? We will, Robert said with quiet confidence. Vincent's been careless. He thinks no one is watching. After ending the call, I returned to my laptop with renewed purpose. If Vincent was planning to leave Meridian, he'd need more than just client relationships. He'd need proprietary information, campaign strategies, pricing models, client analytics. I navigated to our secure file repository, searching for unusual download patterns. The system logged every access to sensitive materials. Vincent's credentials showed multiple bulk downloads over the past 2 months, far more than his role required, all outside normal business hours. I was documenting these anomalies when my phone chimed with an incoming email from the security team. The subject line read simply, "Found." Attached was a draft agreement between Horizon Initiatives and Turner Enterprises, dated for execution next month. The document outlined marketing services nearly identical to what Meridian currently provided, at a slightly lower price point. Vincent was listed as managing partner, with Clarice Thompson as creative director and Crystal Nevins as client relations director. More damning still was an email exchange between Vincent and Marco about recruiting key team members from Meridian once their new venture launched. Louisa will never see it coming, Vincent had written. She's too busy with her procedural reviews to notice the client relationships I'm cultivating. By the time Meridian realizes what's happening, we'll have secured the top 5 accounts. I forwarded everything to Robert with a brief note. Evidence secured. Proceeding as planned tomorrow. His response was equally succinct. The board has been notified. Legal is preparing appropriate actions. Tomorrow we'll proceed with one modification. Security will be present. I closed my laptop and walked to the hotel room window, staring out at the city lights. The woman reflected in the glass looked different somehow, harder, more resolute. I'd spent 15 years building Meridian alongside Vincent, believing we were partners in every sense. Tomorrow, I would stand before the company not as his wife, but as his successor and, if necessary, his adversary. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. We should arrive together tomorrow. For appearance's sake, I replied, No, I'll meet you. There. 7 p.m. sharp. Another text followed immediately. Louisa, be reasonable. We need to present a united front for the clients. I didn't respond. There would be no more facades, no more performances for Vincent's benefit. Instead, I called Amelia. I need one more thing before tomorrow, I said when she answered. Vincent's access credentials to all systems, client management, financial, cloud storage, everything. Don't revoke them yet, but have them ready to lock the moment I give the word. Already prepared, she replied. Robert authorized it this afternoon. One click, and Vincent will be completely locked out of Meridian's systems. Perfect. I hesitated, then asked, Have you communicated with Clarice at all? Minimal contact, Amelia said. Why? Has she confirmed attendance tomorrow? Yes, she's on the final guest list Vincent submitted, listed as Special Projects Coordinator. I smiled grimly. How appropriate. Make sure she receives full access to the event. I want her there for every moment. Understood. Anything else? Yes, I said after a moment's consideration. Find me everything you can about Davidson and Reed's recent pitches to Turner Enterprises. I have a suspicion about Vincent's strategy that I want to confirm. After ending the call, I returned to the bed and gathered my materials into a neat stack. Tomorrow would require precision, composure, and the strategic deployment of everything I'd discovered. Vincent had underestimated me for years, dismissing my attention to detail as procedural obsession rather than the powerful asset it truly was. That same meticulous attention had now given me exactly what I needed to take control, not just of Meridian, but of the narrative Vincent had been crafting behind my back. The resources had always been at my disposal. I simply hadn't recognized their value until now. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. There was still more preparation to be done, more evidence to review. As I finally lay down to sleep, I realized I felt no grief for my marriage anymore, only a clear-eyed determination to protect what truly mattered, Meridian's future and my own. At 6:15 a.m., I met Amelia in the hotel's deserted restaurant, both of us clutching coffee cups like lifelines. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd had even less sleep than I had. "I found something you need to see," she said, sliding a folder across the table. Davidson and Reed never pitched Turner Enterprises. Their CMO confirms they had preliminary discussions only, initiated by Crystal Nevins while she still worked there. I frowned. Vincent told me Turner was considering moving their business to Davidson and Reed. He used it as justification for maintaining stability in our marriage. Another lie, Amelia confirmed. But there's more. Crystal didn't leave Davidson and Reed. Voluntarily, she was terminated for attempting to access confidential client information without authorization. "So Vincent hired a known corporate spy," I murmured, "created a shell company, and is planning to poach Meridian's clients using our own proprietary strategies." Amelia nodded grimly. "The evidence is conclusive. Legal says it constitutes clear breach of fiduciary duty, possibly criminal misappropriation." I took a long sip of coffee, processing the implications. "Has Robert informed the board?" "Emergency meeting at 9 a.m. They'll review everything before tonight's announcement." Amelia hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. I spoke with Clarice yesterday." My spine stiffened. "In what context?" "Standard HR onboarding follow-up. She believes she's been hired as marketing creative director, with a promotion to be announced soon." Amelia's expression was pained. "Louisa, she doesn't know about Horizon initiatives. As far as I can tell, Vincent is using her too." This revelation caught me off guard. I'd imagined Clarice as a willing co-conspirator in Vincent's scheme, not another victim of his manipulation. "Are you certain?" Amelia nodded. When I casually mentioned Crystal Nevins, Clarice had no reaction. "She's referenced the anniversary party multiple times as celebrating your 15 years together. She genuinely believes she's helping plan a surprise for you as part of her job." I leaned back, reassessing my understanding of the situation. "So, Vincent is lying to everyone. Me, Meridian, even his girlfriend." "Classic narcissistic pattern," came a voice from behind us. I turned to see Dr. Meredith Parker, Meridian's organizational psychologist, approaching our table with her own coffee. "Mind if I join you?" I gestured to an empty chair. Meredith had been consulting for Meridian for 5 years, helping with leadership transitions and organizational dynamics. Robert must have called her in. "Amelia briefed me on the situation," Meredith explained, settling into her seat. "From a psychological perspective, what you're describing is textbook high-functioning narcissism. Vincent has created separate narratives for different audiences, each designed to support his self-image and objectives, while betraying everyone in the process," I added. Meredith nodded. "Precisely. For you, he maintained the facade of committed husband to preserve stability during client transitions. For Clarice, he's the misunderstood corporate visionary preparing to elevate her career. For Meridian, he's the irreplaceable client relationship manager. For his new venture, he's the bold entrepreneur. And none of those personas are real," I observed. "They're all aspects of how he wants to be perceived," Meredith corrected. "The question is how to address this most effectively at tonight's event." I'd been so focused on gathering evidence, I hadn't fully considered the psychological dynamics of the confrontation to come. "What do you suggest?" Meredith set her coffee down, leaning forward. "When narcissists are exposed, they typically respond in one of three ways: aggressive denial, victim positioning, or attempted charm offensive. Based on what Amelia has shared, I'd anticipate Vincent will move through all three tonight. First denying allegations, then portraying himself as the victim of a conspiracy, finally attempting to charm his way out by appealing to your shared history. How should Louisa counter those tactics? Amelia asked. With absolute clarity and unwavering boundaries, Meredith replied. No emotional engagement, no debates, just facts presented calmly. And, she fixed me with a direct gaze, you must be prepared for him to make this extremely personal in front of everyone. The thought made my stomach tighten, but I nodded. I can handle it. There's one more perspective to consider, Meredith added. The witnesses, your colleagues, clients, the board members. How this unfolds will define your leadership narrative going forward. She was right. Tonight wasn't just about exposing Vincent, it was my introduction as CEO. How I handled this crisis would establish expectations for my leadership. Remember, Meredith continued, Vincent expects you to react emotionally, as a betrayed wife. Your power lies in responding as CEO, strategic, measured, decisive. As our impromptu council concluded, I felt a new clarity emerging. Vincent had compartmentalized his deceptions, creating isolated versions of reality that served his purposes. My advantage lay in seeing the complete picture, integrating all perspectives into a cohesive understanding that he couldn't manipulate or deny. Thank you both, I said, gathering my materials. Today, we protect Meridian's future, whatever that requires. As I headed back to my room to prepare for the board meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Board chair wants to speak with you privately before the meeting. My office, 8:30. The final piece was falling into place. The board meeting unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. 7 distinguished executives, each with decades of business experience, listened in stunned silence as Robert and I presented the evidence against Vincent, financial records, unauthorized hirings, client meeting discrepancies, and most damning, the Horizon Initiative's documents, all laid out in meticulous detail. This constitutes clear breach of fiduciary duty, said Eleanor. Right, our legal counsel, after reviewing the materials. The company has grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action to recover misappropriated funds. Calvin Reed, the board chair, removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. At 74, he'd seen his share of corporate scandals, but the personal dimension of this one clearly troubled him. Louisa, he said finally, given your relationship with Vincent, do you wish to recuse yourself from decisions regarding his employment status? No, I replied firmly. I can separate my personal and professional responsibilities. As operations director and incoming CEO, I need to be directly involved in addressing this breach. Calvin nodded, his expression softening slightly. And your personal welfare? This can't be easy. My focus is Meridian's stability, I said, surprised by his concern. I've already initiated divorce proceedings. The marriage was compromised before I discovered the professional improprieties. The board voted unanimously to terminate Vincent's employment, effective immediately following tonight's announcement. Security protocols would be implemented to protect company assets and client relationships. As incoming CEO, I would personally contact our major clients to ensure continuity, starting tomorrow morning. As the meeting concluded, Calvin asked me to remain behind. When we were alone, he spoke candidly. I've known you and Vincent since you joined Meridian, watched your careers develop, saw how you complemented each other professionally. He sighed heavily. I never would have predicted this outcome. Neither did I admitted. You understand there will be speculation, accusations, attempts to frame this as a personal vendetta? His eyes held mine steadily. Some will claim you orchestrated Vincent's downfall to advance your own position. I'd already considered this. The evidence speaks for itself. Vincent's actions are documented and indefensible. Evidence matters. In court, Calvin said. In the court of public opinion and client perception, narratives often overpower facts. Vincent excels at crafting narratives. He was right. Vincent's charisma and relationship-building skills had always been his greatest professional assets. He would attempt to spin this situation to his advantage, paint himself as the victim of a vindictive wife. What do you suggest? I asked. Calvin leaned forward. Preempt him. Control the narrative from the outset. Tonight, when Robert announces your appointment, address the elephant in the room directly. Acknowledge your marriage, express appropriate regret for its dissolution, then pivot immediately to Meridian's future. Don't give Vincent's version oxygen. His advice aligned with Meredith's psychological assessment. Don't engage emotionally. Establish clear boundaries. Present facts confidently. I'll revise my remarks accordingly, I agreed. With the board's decisions finalized, I retreated to a small conference room to prepare for the evening ahead. The anniversary party, now my CEO announcement, was scheduled for 7 p.m. I had 8 hours to finalize every detail. First, I called my attorney to confirm the divorce papers were ready for filing first thing Monday morning. Next, I worked with IT security to prepare for Vincent's system access termination, to be executed simultaneously with the announcement. Amelia coordinated with human resources to process the necessary documentation for his termination. Robert arranged for additional security personnel to be present at tonight's event, discreetly positioned but available if needed. Eleanor drafted a statement for clients explaining Vincent's departure, emphasizing Meridian's commitment to continuity and ethical business practices. By 4 p.m., the technical preparations were complete. I then focused on my personal readiness. I'd brought a change of clothes to the office, a deep blue power suit I'd purchased in Milan last year but never worn. Vincent had commented at the time that it was too aggressive for my role. The memory brought a grim smile to my face as I hung it in the executive washroom. At 5:30, I received a text from Vincent. Where are you? We should arrive together. Clients are expecting it. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked in with Robert, who confirmed that everything was ready at the venue, Meridian's newly renovated rooftop space, decorated according to Vincent's specifications, for what he still believed was an anniversary celebration. Security has confirmed Clarice arrived early to finalize arrangements, Robert added. She appears to have no knowledge of what's coming. I felt a momentary pang of sympathy for her, quickly replaced by resolve. Whether knowing participant or unwitting pawn, Clarice was part of Vincent's betrayal. At 6:15, I began my final preparations: hair, makeup, the blue suit that Vincent had discouraged. Around my neck, I fastened a delicate platinum necklace, not the diamond pendant Vincent had given me for our 10th anniversary, but a gift from my mentor in business school. For moments when you need to remember your strength, she'd said. Tonight qualified. In my briefcase, I placed 3 essential items: the leather portfolio Robert would present during the CEO announcement, a folder containing printouts of Vincent's most incriminating emails, and the diamond bracelet from his desk drawer, the one meant for Clarice. The final touch was my revised speech, printed on Meridian letterhead, incorporating Calvin's strategic advice. I read it through once more, making minor adjustments to emphasize stability and forward momentum rather than dwelling on Vincent's betrayal. At precisely 6:45, I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman reflected back appeared collected, authoritative, ready. Gone was any trace of the stunned wife who had discovered her husband's infidelity 3 weeks ago, or the surprised operations director who had learned of Vincent's professional duplicity. In their place stood Meridian's new CEO, clear-eyed, strategic, resolute. My phone buzzed one final time with a message from Vincent. Clients asking about you. Where are you? This is unprofessional. I smiled at the irony and typed a response at, Last, on my way, see you at 7 yo. As I gathered my belongings and headed for the elevator, I felt strangely calm. Tonight would change everything: my marriage, my career, Meridian's leadership. The uncertainty might have been paralyzing if not for one simple truth: I was prepared. Vincent had consistently underestimated me, dismissed my attention to detail, overlooked my strategic capabilities. Tonight, that miscalculation would cost him everything. Meridian's rooftop had been transformed. String lights glimmered against the evening sky, white flowers adorned every table, and a string quartet played softly. A banner stretched across the entrance, celebrating 15 years of partnership. The double meaning wasn't lost on me. As I stepped from the elevator, Amelia appeared at my side, elegant in a black cocktail dress but alert as a soldier before battle. "Security is in position," she murmured. "It confirms they're ready to execute system lockout on your signal. Robert is by the bar with the board members. Vincent is near the podium with the Turner representatives. And Clarice? Circulating with champagne. She's wearing the bracelet." Nearly 60 people had gathered: Meridian's leadership, key clients, board members, and selected staff. Many were already enjoying cocktails, unaware of the drama about to unfold. "Status of Marco?" I asked, noting Vincent's right-hand man was nowhere in sight. Called in sick after receiving a copy of his termination papers this afternoon. Legal advised we process his separation simultaneously with Vincent's given his involvement. Another ally secured, not through loyalty, but through self-preservation. Marco had chosen to distance himself from Vincent's downfall rather than stand beside him. Before I could move toward Robert, James Turner, CEO of Turner Enterprises and Meridian's most valuable client, approached with a warm smile. "Louisa, there you are. Vincent said you were running late." He kissed my cheek. "Happy anniversary. 15 years of marriage and business partnership. Quite an achievement." "Thank you, James, though tonight might hold some surprises." "Ah, Vincent mentioned something special was planned." James winked. "He's been quite mysterious lately. Multiple off-site meetings, discussions about new directions. I assume it's all leading to tonight's announcement?" So Vincent had been laying groundwork with Turner as well, preparing him for the Horizon Initiative's reveal. "There will definitely be an announcement," I confirmed. "One I believe will interest you greatly." James raised his eyebrows. "Well, don't keep us in suspense too long. By the way, I've been meaning to discuss our contract renewal with you directly. Vincent's recent proposals have been unusual. Higher fees with less transparency. This was unexpected, a potential opening I couldn't ignore." "I'd welcome that conversation, James. Perhaps tomorrow morning? I suspect you'll understand those unusual proposals better after tonight." "Consider it scheduled," he agreed, clearly curious. As James moved away, Robert approached, champagne flutes in hand. "Everything set?" he asked quietly. "Just had an interesting conversation with James Turner," I replied. "Vincent's been discussing new directions with him." "Not surprising. The timing works. Tonight's announcement, Monday's contract signing for Horizon. Clean transfer of assets and clients. Except for one small problem," I said. "What's that?" Gestured subtly across the room where Vincent had finally spotted me, his expression shifting rapidly from relief to confusion as he registered my attire and confident demeanor. "Vincent doesn't realize his plan is already exposed," I said. "He still believes tonight is proceeding according to his script." Robert's smile was thin. The element of surprise remains our greatest advantage. Vincent was now moving toward us, weaving through guests with practiced charm. Clarice followed several paces behind, tray of champagne in hand, the diamond bracelet glinting on her wrist. "I need 5 minutes with the Turner team before we begin," I told Robert. "Lay the groundwork for tomorrow's conversation. The announcement is scheduled for 7:30, he reminded me. I'll be ready." I turned to intercept Vincent, who had almost reached us. "One more thing. Make sure someone captures Clarice's reaction on video. We may need it for the legal proceedings. The rooftop terrace hummed with conversation as I strategically positioned myself between the Turner executives and Vincent's line of sight. This brief window before the announcement was crucial for neutralizing Vincent's influence with our most important client. "James, could I borrow you and your team for a moment?" I asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner. "There's something specific about the Morrison integration I wanted to discuss before the formal proceedings begin." Vincent had been moving toward us, but at the mention of the Morrison account, Turner's direct competitor, he hesitated. Interrupting would seem suspicious, yet allowing me unmonitored access to Turner was equally problematic for his plans. I led them to a secluded seating area partially concealed by decorative foliage, a deliberate choice offering both privacy and a clear view of the podium. Amelia positioned herself nearby, tablet in hand, ostensibly checking event details but actually prepared to document this conversation. "Before we discuss Morrison," I began, my voice low but clear, "I should inform you that Meridian is undergoing significant leadership changes, effective immediately." James leaned forward. "What kind of changes?" "Robert Walters is retiring. The board has appointed me as Meridian's new CEO." I maintained steady eye contact, watching comprehension dawn across their faces. "The announcement will be made officially in approximately 20 minutes. "Congratulations," James said automatically, then frowned. But Vincent gave us the impression he was being considered for that position. In fact, he's discussed potential structural changes to our account management that seemed to assume his advancement. "I'm not surprised," I replied. "Unfortunately, Vincent has been operating under several misapprehensions lately, both personal and professional." One of Turner's executives, Renee, studied me intently. "This anniversary celebration isn't really about your marriage, is it?" "Very perceptive," I acknowledged. "Vincent planned this event believing it was for our 15th wedding anniversary. I allowed that belief to stand because it created the perfect opportunity to gather Meridian's key stakeholders for the leadership announcement." James glanced toward where Vincent stood watching us. "I'm sensing a significant disconnect here." "More than you know," I confirmed. "James, I value the relationship between Turner and Meridian too much for anything but complete transparency. Vincent has been preparing to leave Meridian and take your account with him to a new venture called Horizon Initiatives." The shock on their faces confirmed they had no knowledge of Vincent's scheme. I removed a slim folder from my portfolio and slid it across to James. "This contains documentation of unauthorized financial transactions, evidence of a competing business, entity established by Vincent, and preliminary contract terms he drafted for transitioning your business away from Meridian without board knowledge or approval." James opened the folder, scanning the contents with growing alarm. "These contract terms, we never discussed these specifics." "I suspected as much," I replied. "Vincent has been operating independently, preparing to leverage his client relationships for personal gain." Renee looked up from the documents, her expression hardening. "These profit margin allocations would have reduced our services while increasing our costs. Cleverly disguised but unmistakable." "Precisely," I agreed. "Vincent counted on his relationship with you to prevent close scrutiny of the details." James closed the folder, his earlier conviviality replaced by the sharp focus of a CEO protecting his company's interests. "What happens now?" "Vincent's employment with Meridian ends tonight. All client relationships will be transitioned to secure account teams effective immediately." I met his gaze directly. "I personally guarantee Turner's services will continue, uninterrupted with complete transparency and accountability." James nodded thoughtfully. "I'd still like to meet tomorrow to discuss the transition in detail." "Absolutely," I agreed. 9 a.m. at your offices? I'll bring our senior account team, the legitimate one." As the Turner team dispersed, Amelia approached. 7:25, Robert is prepared to begin the announcement. Security has been alerted to watch Vincent and Clarice closely. I surveyed the terrace, now filled with Meridian employees, clients, and board members. The string quartet had stopped playing, and servers were ensuring everyone had champagne for the upcoming toast. Vincent stood near the podium, checking his watch repeatedly, anxiety evident in his posture. "It's time," I said, straightening my jacket and squaring my shoulders. "Send the signal to IT. Execute the system lockout the moment Robert begins speaking." As the crowd quieted, Vincent intercepted me before I could reach Robert at the podium. "Where have you been?" he hissed, his smile fixed for onlookers. "I've been covering for you all evening. And what were you discussing with Turner?" "Just business," I replied evenly. "You should join me at the front. It's almost time for the announcement." A flash of triumph crossed Vincent's face. He misinterpreted my invitation as surrender, believing I'd reverted to my familiar supportive role. His posture relaxed visibly as he placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the podium in a gesture of possessive familiarity. "I was worried you'd make this difficult," he murmured. "Glad to see you're being reasonable about tonight." I said nothing, allowing him his momentary illusion of control. From the corner of my eye, I saw Clarice watching us, her expression softening at what appeared to be a reconciliation. Beside the podium, Robert observed our approach, his eyes questioning whether our plan remained intact. I gave him a slight nod. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began as we reached the front, "thank you all for joining us this evening for what is indeed a celebration of partnership." Vincent smiled broadly, standing tall beside me as he surveyed the assembled guests, Meridian's leadership, valued clients, his carefully cultivated network of relationships. In that moment, he radiated confidence, clearly believing everything was proceeding according to his design. "Many of you were invited here tonight under the pretense of celebrating Vincent and Louisa Harlow's 15th wedding anniversary," Robert continued. "A milestone certainly worth recognizing." Murmurs of agreement and lifted glasses rippled through the crowd. Vincent squeezed my waist gently, a gesture that might have appeared affectionate to observers but felt like a possessive warning. "However," Robert said, his tone shifting subtly, "there is another partnership we're here to celebrate tonight, one that has shaped Meridian's success and will guide its future." Vincent's grip on my waist tightened almost imperceptibly. I moved, slightly, breaking the contact as Robert continued. "As many of you know, I'll be retiring at the end of this year after 27 years with Meridian. The board has been engaged in a careful succession planning process to ensure our company's continued excellence." Vincent stepped forward slightly, his body language suggesting readiness to receive an expected honor. I watched as he adjusted his tie and straightened his shoulders, a peacock preparing to display his plumage. "Before I make the official announcement," Robert said, "Vincent has asked to say a few words about his 15-year journey with Louisa, both personally and professionally. This was the moment we'd strategically added to the program, an opportunity for Vincent to fully incriminate himself before the revelation." Robert handed over the microphone with a practiced smile, stepping back as Vincent took center stage. "Thank you, Robert," Vincent began, his voice warm and confident. 15 years ago, I made the best decision of my life, both personally and professionally." He turned to me with a practiced smile. "Louisa has been my partner in every sense of the word, supporting our vision for Meridian, maintaining the operational excellence that allows creativity to flourish." The crowd smiled appreciatively at what seemed like a loving tribute. Only those closest to the podium might have noticed the slight tightening around my eyes as Vincent continued to script a reality that had never existed. "Tonight marks not just our anniversary, but a new beginning," Vincent declared, his voice rising with apparent emotion. "A new chapter for us, for Meridian, and for the incredible partnerships we've built together." He raised his glass, the perfect image of a successful executive at the height of his powers, unaware that his empire was already crumbling beneath his feet. To partnerships, transformation, and exciting new horizons. The crowd echoed his toast, Glasses raised in celebration of what they believed was a touching anniversary moment. Vincent turned to me, expectation clear in his eyes, waiting for me to play my part in this charade one final time before Robert's announcement presumably elevated him to new heights. The false resolution hung in the air between us, a bubble of illusion moments from bursting. As the applause for Vincent's toast faded, Robert stepped forward to reclaim the microphone. The moment had arrived. "Thank you, Vincent, for those words about partnership," Robert said. "Partnership indeed forms the foundation of Meridian's success. Partnership built on trust, integrity, and shared vision." Vincent nodded in agreement, still basking in what he believed was his moment. Beside him, I maintained perfect composure, my expression neutral despite the thundering of my heart. "It is therefore my great pleasure," Robert continued, "to announce Meridian's new Chief Executive Officer, approved unanimously by our Board of Directors." He paused, allowing tension to build. "Please join me in congratulating Louisa Harlow." The silence that followed lasted only seconds but felt eternal. Vincent's expression froze in mid-smile, his eyes darting between Robert and me as comprehension dawned. Around us, surprise rippled through the crowd, followed by scattered applause that quickly built into enthusiastic celebration. Robert turned to me, presenting an elegant wooden box. "Louisa, this pen has been passed to each CEO of Meridian since our founding. It represents our commitment to integrity in every signature, every agreement, every promise we make." As I accepted the pen, Vincent finally found his voice. "There must be some mistake," he said, the words clearly audible despite his attempt at a whisper. Robert ignored him, stepping back as I moved to the microphone. The applause continued, led enthusiastically by James Turner and the board members who were fully briefed on the situation. "Thank you all for being here tonight. As Robert mentioned, this evening marks several significant transitions," I began. "First, I want to acknowledge Robert's extraordinary leadership. His mentorship has been invaluable, preparing me to guide Meridian into its next chapter." Vincent remained frozen beside me, his public persona battling with the shock and fury I could see building behind his eyes. "I also want to address what many of you believed was the primary purpose of tonight's gathering," I continued. "My marriage to Vincent is indeed reaching a milestone, though not the celebration we had anticipated. Vincent and I will be separating, a decision that predates my appointment as CEO." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Clarice, standing near the back, visibly paled, her hand rising to touch the diamond bracelet at her wrist. "As we move forward, Meridian remains committed to the highest standards of ethical business practice, client service, and organizational integrity. These values will guide every aspect of our operations, without exception." "Finally," I said, "I must address one immediate organizational change. Effective immediately, Vincent Harlow is no longer employed by Meridian Technologies." The shocked silence that followed was absolute. Vincent's facade finally cracked completely, his expression contorting with rage. "This is absurd," he sputtered, reaching for the microphone. "You can't—" I smoothly retained control. "This decision follows the discovery of serious financial improprieties, including unauthorized personnel actions, misappropriation of company resources, and preparation to divert Meridian clients to a competing venture established in secret." Gasps erupted throughout the crowd. Clarice's expression shifted from confusion to horror as comprehension dawned. Security personnel moved closer to Vincent, whose complexion had grown alarmingly red. "This is a personal vendetta," Vincent declared, loudly. "She's retaliating because of our marital issues. The evidence was reviewed and verified by our legal team and board of directors. This is not personal, Vincent. It's fiduciary responsibility." "You planned this," he accused, his voice rising. "Set me up to humiliate me publicly." "No, Vincent," I replied evenly. "You planned this. Tonight was meant to be your triumph, announcing your new venture, possibly even introducing Clarice as more than your assistant. I simply revealed your plans before you could execute them." Vincent's gaze darted desperately around the room, seeking allies and finding none. "You have nothing," Vincent declared. "No proof, just accusations. The clients know me, trust me. They'll follow me wherever I go." I reached into my portfolio and extracted the folder containing his emails and the Horizon Initiatives contract. "Would you like me to read these aloud, Vincent? Or would you prefer a more dignified exit?" He stared at the folder, recognition and defeat washing over his features. Without another word, he turned and strode toward the elevator. At the terrace exit, he paused. "Clarice, are you coming?" All eyes turned to Clarice, who stood frozen in place. "Clarice," I said quietly, "you should know that your position was created without proper authorization, at a salary level that violated company policy. More importantly, the bracelet you're wearing was purchased using company funds disguised as business expenses." Color drained from her face as she looked down at the diamond bracelet. She slowly removed it, placed it on a nearby table, and walked to the elevator, alone. The aftermath arrived in waves. The first came at 11:43 p.m., hours after the party had ended, when my phone lit up with Vincent's name. I watched it ring unanswered, then listened to his voicemail, a rambling mixture of threats, accusations, and finally, a desperate plea for conversation. "This isn't over, Louisa," he concluded. "You have no idea what you've started." I forwarded the message to our legal team without reply. The second wave crashed at 6:17 a.m. when Amelia called to report Vincent had arrived at Meridian's offices, attempting to access his former workspace. "Security denied entry per protocol," she informed me. "He's demanding to retrieve personal items from his office." "Everything in his office is company property pending investigation," I replied. "He can submit a formal request through legal for any genuinely personal belongings." By 7:30 a.m., the third wave hit, an email from Vincent to Meridian's entire client list, claiming he'd been forced out in a personal vendetta and announcing the launch of Horizon Initiatives to continue, serving clients with the creativity and relationship focus Meridian now lacks. I had anticipated this move. Before his message had even hit client inboxes, my executive team was already making personal calls to each key account, explaining the situation with transparency and professionalism. When James Turner forwarded me Vincent's email with a single question mark, I replied simply, "As discussed, see you at 9. The fourth wave arrived as I walked into Meridian's lobby for my first official day as CEO. The reception desk was surrounded by flower arrangements, congratulatory bouquets from industry colleagues, board members, and clients who had witnessed last night's revelations. Among them stood a simple orchid plant with a card from Robert. "Leadership isn't about avoiding storms, but navigating through them. You've already proven yourself a masterful captain." In my new office, Robert's former space, I found the executive team waiting with coffee and determined expressions. We had precisely 2 hours before my meeting with Turner Enterprises to finalize our response strategy. "Vincent has been attempting to contact team members directly," reported Calvin, our chief technology officer. 7 people received calls overnight. "Who?" I asked, settling behind my desk. "Primarily creative staff. The designers he worked with most closely, the content team lead, the 2 analysts who maintained the proprietary market models. Our intellectual capital," I observed. "Has anyone responded?" "No," Amelia interjected. "They all reported the contacts immediately per the communication we sent yesterday. The legal reminder about confidentiality agreements was quite effective." I nodded, unsurprised. Vincent had always undervalued the loyalty that comes from treating people with respect. While he'd cultivated client relationships assiduously, he'd treated Meridian's staff as interchangeable resources. "What about Clarice?" I asked. "Applied for unemployment benefits this morning," Amelia replied. No communication with Vincent that we can detect. She's scheduled for an exit interview Wednesday. I considered this information. Move it up to today if possible. Offer her the standard separation package despite the irregular hiring. She may have been a willing participant in the relationship, but we have no evidence she knew about Horizon initiatives. The team exchanged surprised glances at my decision. Vindictiveness isn't a leadership strategy, I explained simply. Besides, treating her fairly draws a clear contrast with how Vincent operated. Eleanor, our legal counsel, cleared her throat. Speaking of Vincent's operations, forensic accounting has identified at least $342,000 in misappropriated funds over the past year. The board is asking whether we intend to pursue criminal charges. We'll follow standard protocol for financial malfeasance, I decided. File the insurance claim, provide evidence to authorities, and let the legal process unfold without pushing for specific outcomes. Our priority is protecting Meridian and moving forward, not punishing Vincent. My phone buzzed with a text from James Turner. Heading to your office now, bringing our legal team and the contract authority. Ready to discuss that renewal you mentioned. Smiled, straightening my jacket as I rose to meet the day's next challenge. Vincent had always claimed client relationships as his exclusive domain, his essential contribution to Meridian's success. It was time to test that theory against reality. 1. Month after the rooftop confrontation, Meridian's transformation was well underway. What Vincent had intended as our anniversary celebration had instead become my professional rebirth, the night marking both the end of my marriage and the beginning of my leadership. The executive floor had been reconfigured, literally and figuratively. I'd removed the imposing mahogany desk that had dominated Robert's, now my, office, replacing it with a modern glass-topped workspace positioned to face visitors rather than create distance from them. The walls once covered with Robert's golf tournament photos now displayed Meridian's core values and growth metrics. Most significantly, I'd removed the door between the CEO's office and the adjacent space, formerly Vincent's domain as marketing director. That area had been converted into a collaborative strategy room, with transparent glass walls symbolizing the open communication I intended to foster. The architectural changes are just phase 1, I explained to the board during our monthly meeting. The organizational restructuring is nearly complete. Calvin Reed nodded approvingly as he reviewed the updated org chart. Interesting approach. You've eliminated the marketing director position entirely. Not eliminated, redistributed, I clarified. The traditional hierarchy concentrated too much authority in a single role, creating vulnerability when that person left. The new structure distributes client relationships across 4 senior client partners, each supported by integrated creative and strategic teams. Eleanor Wright tapped her pen thoughtfully. And the financial impact of this restructuring? I nodded to Amelia, who advanced to the next slide. Personnel costs have increased by approximately 3%, primarily due to well-deserved promotions for team members who had been undervalued and underpaid in the previous structure. However, client retention is at 97%, and we've already secured 2 major new accounts that will offset those costs within the quarter. And Horizon initiatives? Calvin asked. Any further developments? Their launch has been indefinitely delayed, I replied. Without Meridian's client contracts, proprietary models, or staff talent, Vincent has struggled to establish credibility. 2 potential investors have withdrawn after learning of the circumstances surrounding his departure. I didn't mention the most personal consequence, that our divorce had been finalized with remarkable speed, Vincent agreeing to all terms rather than risk further exposure of his financial manipulations. As the board meeting concluded, Calvin asked me to remain behind. When we were alone, he settled into the chair across from my desk, his expression thoughtful. 1 month in, and you've already reshaped Meridian more thoroughly than most CEOs manage in a year, he observed. The team seems energized. Clients, are satisfied, and financial projections are strong. Yet I sense something unresolved. Unresolved in what way? Vincent. He said simply, the personal aspect of this transition. How are you really doing, Louisa? The question caught me off guard. In the whirlwind of professional responsibilities, I'd compartmentalized my personal feelings about Vincent's betrayal. I'm processing it, I admitted. The professional betrayal was actually easier to address than the personal one. Clear protocols, concrete evidence, definitive actions. The emotional aspects are messier. I've been through divorce myself, Calvin said. Even when it's unquestionably the right decision, it carries grief for what might have been. That's surprisingly accurate, I admitted. I don't miss Vincent or regret ending our marriage, but I do sometimes mourn the partnership I thought we had, professionally and personally. Have you encountered him since that night? Once, I replied, recalling the tense meeting in our lawyer's office. He was subdued, different from the confident manipulator or the raging man from the rooftop, almost lost. And how did that make you feel? I considered the question carefully. Less satisfied than I might have expected. There's no victory in watching someone self-destruct, even someone who betrayed you. Calvin's expression softened. That perspective is exactly why you're the right person to lead Meridian. Empathy balanced with clear boundaries. As he left, I reflected that the structural reorganization wasn't just about efficiency or optics. It represented a fundamental shift in how power flowed through the organization. No more fiefdoms, no more information hoarding, no more singular dependencies. Just like my personal transformation, Meridian's evolution reflected the truth I'd finally embraced. Strength didn't come from control, but from connection, not from appearance, but from substance. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, I stood before Meridian's assembled staff in our newly renovated conference center. The quarterly all-hands meeting had once been Vincent's theater, a stage for charismatic pronouncements and vague inspirational rhetoric. I'd transformed it into a forum for transparency, data-driven insights, and genuine dialogue. The numbers tell a compelling story, I said, gesturing to the projection behind me. Client retention has stabilized at 98%. New business acquisition has increased 32% quarter over quarter. Employee satisfaction metrics show improvement across all departments, with particular strength in creative teams. The audience, nearly 200 Meridian employees, responded with appreciative murmurs and attentive nods. These weren't just abstract statistics. They represented their daily work and collective achievement. But the impact extends beyond spreadsheets, I continued, switching to a slide showing industry headlines. Meridian sets new standard for agency transparency. How Louisa Harlow's leadership reinvented client relationships. Women in leadership. Meridian's transformation becomes industry model. The last headline had surprised me most when it appeared in Adweek 3 months after I'd assumed leadership. I hadn't set out to become a symbol of women's advancement in our industry, yet the dramatic circumstances of my appointment had inevitably cast me in that role. Our structural changes have attracted attention beyond our client base, I acknowledged. 3 major agencies have reorganized their client service models following our lead. 2 industry associations have adopted ethics guidelines inspired by our new transparency protocols. And 11 former employees have reached out about returning to Meridian, citing our cultural transformation. I paused, allowing the significance to register. Vincent's departure, painful and dramatic as it had been, had created ripples extending far beyond our company walls. Most significantly, I continued, we've received an unprecedented number of applications from women and minorities seeking leadership roles at Meridian. Our new associate leadership program has drawn candidates who tell us they previously wouldn't have considered us because of perceived old guard barriers to advancement. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Vincent, who had systematically marginalized diverse voices while maintaining a polished exterior of inclusivity, had inadvertently created the conditions for genuine diversity to flourish in his absence. This broader impact matters, I emphasized. Not just for Meridian's reputation, but because it reflects the authentic values we're now living daily. Each of you has contributed to this transformation through your commitment, creativity, and courage during a challenging transition. As I opened the floor for questions, I recognized faces that had once been relegated to back rows and support roles, talented individuals whose contributions Vincent had minimized or overlooked. Many now led key initiatives, their expertise finally recognized and rewarded. The broader impact of Meridian's transformation wasn't just statistical or structural. It was deeply human. People who had once dimmed their light to survive in Vincent's shadow were now illuminating our path forward with their brilliance. Our story had resonated throughout the industry because it reflected universal experiences. Nearly every company had its Vincent, charismatic figures who built empires on charm while stifling genuine talent around them. Our transformation offered a blueprint for what could happen when substance triumphed over style, when collaborative strength replaced individual dominance. Industry publications had requested interviews about our revolutionary approach to creative leadership. 2 business schools had developed case studies on our restructuring. A national conference on workplace equity had invited me to deliver a keynote address on dismantling hidden barriers to advancement. None of this had been my goal when I confronted Vincent that night on the rooftop. I had simply sought to protect Meridian from his betrayal and claim the leadership role I'd earned. Yet the ripples of that confrontation had grown into waves of change extending far beyond our company. And somewhere in that revelation, I found the final healing of my own wounds, not in Vincent's downfall, but in the flowering of potential his departure had unleashed. 1 year to the day after the rooftop confrontation, I found myself again on Meridian's terrace, though the space had been transformed. Gone were the formal seating arrangements and stiff corporate ambiance, replaced by comfortable conversation areas and vibrant greenery. Where Vincent had once planned our anniversary celebration, employees now gathered regularly for collaborative sessions and casual conversations. I stood at the edge, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of amber and gold. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Light emerging after darkness, clarity after confusion. "Penny for your thoughts," came Robert's familiar voice as he joined me at the railing. Though officially retired, he remained a valued advisor and friend. "Just reflecting on the year," I replied. "It feels both longer and shorter than 12 months. Robert nodded, understanding without explanation. Time bends around significant transformation. "You've accomplished extraordinary things, Louisa." Meridian had indeed transformed under my leadership. Our client portfolio had expanded by 27%. Our workforce had grown, diversified, and reported unprecedented satisfaction. The industry recognized us as innovators in both structure and culture. "I received a LinkedIn request from Vincent yesterday," I said, surprising myself by sharing this detail. "First contact in nearly a year." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Did you accept?" "No," I replied, "but I did look at his profile. He started over. Small consultancy in Phoenix, modest client list. His summary mentions lessons learned and authentic leadership." "Do you believe it's genuine?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm not sure it matters. His journey is his own now. Separate from mine, separate from Meridian's." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the colors deepen across the horizon. A year ago, Vincent's betrayal had consumed my thoughts. Now, he occupied barely a footnote in the story I was writing. "What surprised you most?" Robert asked. "About the past year?" "That the hardest part wasn't dealing with the aftermath of Vincent's actions," I answered honestly. "It was confronting how long I'd allowed myself to be diminished, professionally and personally. Recognizing my own complicity In accepting limitations others imposed. Robert nodded thoughtfully. We often tolerate what we believe we cannot change until something forces us to see possibilities beyond our constructed boundaries. The rooftop confrontation didn't create my strength, I reflected. It simply revealed what was already there, hidden beneath years of compromise and accommodation. Below us, employees began gathering for the anniversary celebration we'd planned, marking Meridian's successful transformation and bright future. Unlike Vincent's elaborate charade, this was an authentic celebration, grounded in shared achievement, rather than deception. When I first approached you about the CEO position, Robert said, I recognized your operational excellence and strategic thinking. What I couldn't have anticipated was how completely you'd reinvent leadership at Meridian. I didn't set out to reinvent anything, I admitted. I simply removed what was false and amplified what was true. And therein lay the universal truth I'd discovered through this journey. Authentic power doesn't come from controlling narratives or manipulating perceptions. It emerges naturally when you align your actions with your values, when you refuse to be defined by others' limitations. Vincent had spent years crafting an image of success built on charm and deception. I had built actual success founded on competence and integrity. The contrast couldn't have been more stark or more instructive. It's time, Robert said, gesturing toward the gathering crowd. They're waiting for you. As we moved toward the celebration, I thought of all the women who had reached out over the past year, sharing their own stories of being underestimated, offering gratitude for the example of reclaiming power with dignity. Their messages had transformed my personal experience into something universally meaningful. When Vincent had introduced Clarice as his girlfriend at what he thought was our anniversary celebration, he believed he was controlling the narrative. When I revealed myself as his new CEO, I wasn't just changing our individual power dynamic. I was demonstrating a truth that resonated far beyond our specific circumstances. The truth that sometimes, the person they underestimate is exactly the one they should fear most. Not because of vengeance or retaliation, but because underestimated people build strength in the shadows, develop resilience through challenge, and recognize opportunities overlooked by those blinded by their own presumed superiority. The universal meaning wasn't about Vincent's downfall or even my ascension. It was about the transformative power of seeing clearly, yourself, others, situations, and having the courage to act on that clarity, whatever the cost. It was about recognizing that your greatest strength often lies precisely where others perceive weakness. Welcome, everyone, I began, my voice clear and confident. Today we celebrate not just where we are, but how far we've come, and the unlimited potential of where we're going, together. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.